They say he was a good man. A quiet man. His neighbors knew him as Mr. Yoon, the polite landlord on the third floor who always bowed first. His kids called him Appa. His wife believed every word he ever said. But deep inside the streets of Itaewon, in a basement that smelled of cigarettes and old money, they called him something else entirely. They called him the Ghost. And if you knew that name, you already knew too much. Pause. Silence. Then a heartbeat sound effect. This is the story of a man who fooled everyone around him. A man who built two worlds, one in the sunlight, one in the dark. And the night those two worlds finally crashed into each other, changed everything. Seoul never really sleeps. Even at 3 a.m, the Han River glows with the lights of 1,000 apartments stacked on top of each other. Neon signs flicker in the rain. Taxis rush through empty streets. And somewhere in all of that noise and light, a man named Yoon Jin-woo is sitting alone at his kitchen table. He's not a big man. Not intimidating on the surface. Medium height. A face that could belong to a schoolteacher or an accountant. Thick glasses he didn't need, he wore them on purpose. Sharp black hair, slightly graying at the temples. The kind of man you'd forget 5 minutes after meeting him. That was the whole point. His wife, Min-ji, is asleep in the next room. Their 2 daughters are in university now. There's a cat named Donut who sleeps on the couch. The apartment is warm. The refrigerator hums. Everything looks completely, perfectly ordinary. But on the table in front of Yoon Jin-woo is a phone. Not his regular phone, the Samsung his wife buys him every 2 years. This is another phone. Older. Prepaid. And it's buzzing. Not ringing, buzzing. Short pulses. A code. He looks at the screen for a long time. Then he stands up, walks to the window, and stares out at the city below. And you can see something happen in his eyes. Like a light switching off. The warm family man disappears. Something colder slides in behind his face. He types back 2 words. I know. He puts the phone in his pocket, goes back to bed, kisses his wife on the forehead. She murmurs his name. He stares at the ceiling. Who is this man? Where did he come from? And what exactly does he know? To understand Yoon Jin-woo, you have to go back. Way back. To a boy growing up in Incheon in the late 1980s, in an apartment so small that 3 families shared 1 bathroom. A boy whose father gambled everything away before he was 10 years old. A boy who learned very early that the world does not give you anything. You take it, or someone else takes it from you. His name on the streets wasn't always the Ghost. When he was young, 19, maybe 20, they called him Silver Tongue. Because Yoon Jin-woo could talk. He could walk into a room full of dangerous men and walk out with everything he wanted without throwing a single punch. That was his gift. His weapon. He got recruited into the Daewha Brotherhood when he was 22. Not because he was violent. Not because he was fearless. But because the boss at the time, a heavy man named Park Chung-suk, recognized something rare in Yoon. He recognized intelligence. Real intelligence. The kind that plans 17 steps ahead while everyone else is still counting to 3. For 3 years, Yoon Jin-woo did everything they asked. He collected money. He mediated disputes. He handled problems with words instead of fists. And slowly, quietly, he rose. Not by stepping over people, but by making himself so useful that no one could imagine the organization without him. By the time he was 28, he wasn't collecting anymore. He was running an entire district. Itaewon. The most complicated, most international, most profitable district in Seoul's underground. Where the money flowed from every direction. Foreign nationals, clubs, protection rackets, private gambling rooms, and the quiet, invisible trafficking of things best left unnamed. He was very good at his job. Too good. That was the beginning of his real problem. Here's something that most people don't understand about organized crime in Seoul. It doesn't look like the movies. There are no flashy suits. No gold chains. No black SUVs with tinted windows rolling through every neighborhood. Most of it is invisible. Hidden inside legitimate businesses. A restaurant that always has VIP reservations. A private car service that never advertises. A real estate company that buys and sells property at very strange prices. Yoon Jin-woo understood this better than anyone. He was the one who built those structures. He convinced the Brotherhood to invest in real estate before it was trendy. He helped them set up holding companies. He kept records so clean that 3 separate police investigations came and went without finding a single piece of evidence. He wasn't just a gang member anymore. He was a financial architect, a shadow executive. And at the same time, and this is the part that almost nobody believed when it came out later, he was building a normal life. A real one. He had met Min-ji at a bookstore in Hongdae. She was studying literature. He was buying a book on business accounting for actual work, not the kind he told people about. They started talking. He was charming without trying too hard. She thought he was a little mysterious, a little sad around the eyes, but kind. Genuinely kind in the way that men in her world rarely were. They got married when he was 31. He told her he worked in real estate, which was true. Sort of. Their daughters were born 2 years apart. First Soo-yeon, then Doon. And something happened to Yoon Jin-woo that he never expected. He fell in love. Not just with his wife. With the life. The normal, quiet, boring, beautiful life. Dinner at the table. School recitals. Sunday walks along the river. He wanted to leave. He genuinely wanted out. But here's the thing about organizations like the Brotherhood. You don't just leave. Not when you know what Yoon Jin-woo knew. Not when you've been trusted with the numbers, the names, the structure. The only way out was in a box. And Yoon Jin-woo was not ready to die. So, he did something dangerous. Something brilliant. Something insane. He started building a second set of records. For years, quietly, in encrypted files on a laptop he kept in a storage unit in Mapogu, he documented everything. Transactions. Names. Dates. Real estate deals that traced directly back to illegal money. He wasn't doing it for anyone. Not yet. He was doing it as insurance. As leverage. As a way out that didn't require getting killed. For almost a decade, he maintained this impossible balance. Dedicated family man on one side. Shadow financial director of one of Seoul's most powerful criminal organizations on the other. And somehow, neither world bled into the other. Until the night, he got a call about a man named Baek-tae-oh. Baek-tae-oh was new money. Aggressive. Younger than Yoon by 12 years, and hungry in a way that young men always are when they haven't yet learned that hunger is dangerous. He had risen fast in the Brotherhood's Gangnam branch. Too fast. And he had eyes on expansion. Specifically, he had eyes on Itaewon, Yoon's district. The old boss, Park Chung-suk, was ill. Liver cancer. The kind that doesn't forgive. The kind of news that makes every ambitious man in the organization start quietly sharpening knives. And suddenly the phone was buzzing more often. The coded messages were getting more urgent. And Yoon Jin-woo was sitting at his kitchen table at 3 in the morning, realizing that the balance he had maintained for 10 years was finally beginning to crack. The meeting happened in a private room at a restaurant in Yongsan. 12 men around a low table. Expensive whiskey nobody was drinking. The kind of silence that fills a room when everyone knows what's coming, but nobody wants to say it first. Yoon Jin-woo sat at the far end. He watched Baek-tae-oh the way a chess player watches the board. Not looking at the pieces. Looking at the patterns. Baek had brought 3 men with him, who shouldn't have been there. New faces. Hard faces. That alone told Yoon everything he needed to know about what kind of meeting this was going to be. The agenda was simple. Transition. Who would take over as senior director when Park Chung-suk was gone? Several names were discussed. Positions were carefully not stated. Loyalties were quietly tested. Yoon said almost nothing. He asked 2 questions. Just 2. But both questions were landmines, designed to reveal exactly where each man in the room stood. By the end of the meeting, he had mapped the entire battlefield. He drove home in the rain. Sat in his car outside his building for 40 minutes. Thinking. He had 2 options. He could maneuver. Use his position, his knowledge, his relationships to secure himself in the new structure under whoever came next. Or he could get out. Now. Use the records he had built. Go to someone. But go to who? The police? In Seoul, in the world he moved through, the relationship between the Brotherhood and certain parts of law enforcement was complicated in ways that made the word corrupt sound too simple. He knew names. badge numbers. People on both sides of the line who owed favors to the other. And then there was the question of his family. If he moved wrong, if he miscalculated even slightly, Min-ji and his daughters would pay for it. That was not a theoretical concern. He had seen it happen. He had, God help him, been in the room when decisions like that were made. He went upstairs, cooked breakfast for his daughters before school, helped Daeun find her missing textbook, hugged Min-ji at the door when she left for work. He was smiling. But behind those fake glasses, behind those calm dark eyes, he was running calculations he couldn't stop. 3 days later, a man named Oh Sung-jin was found dead in his car in a parking garage in Mapo. Oh Sung-jin was the Brotherhood's logistics coordinator, the man who knew where every physical shipment went, how it moved, who touched it. He was also, you knew, the only other person who had been quietly considering going to outside authorities. The message was clear. The timing was not a coincidence. Yoon Jin-woo called in sick to his legitimate job, the real estate office he ran as a front, and spent 3 hours in a cafe in Sinchon, doing nothing but staring at a cold cup of Americano. Baek Tae-oh had already started cleaning house. And Yoon was on the list. He just didn't know when. That uncertainty, that waiting, is its own kind of torture. He went to his daughter's university graduation ceremony 2 weeks later and sat in the audience with a smile on his face and cold sweat down his back because one of the men seated 3 rows behind him was someone Baek Tae-oh used to deliver messages. A message had been delivered. Yoon was being watched. Here is what nobody knew. Not the Brotherhood. Not Baek Tae-oh. Not even Min-ji. For the past 4 years, Yoon Jin-woo had been talking to someone. Not the police. Not a journalist. Not a lawyer. He had been talking to a man named Detective Sergeant Lim Jae-hyun, a financial crimes investigator who had spent 6 years trying to build a case against the Brotherhood and come up empty every single time. A man who was 3 months from forced retirement, the kind the department gives you when they've decided you've become an inconvenience. Yoon had approached him first, indirectly, through a series of anonymous tips that were structured so carefully, giving just enough information to be useful, never enough to be conclusive, that Lim had spent 2 years trying to figure out who his source was before he finally gave up and just accepted that the tips kept coming. Then one evening, a man sat down across from Lim in a Pojangmaka tent near his apartment and ordered 2 bowls of tteokbokki and said, very quietly, I can give you everything, but I need a very specific kind of guarantee. Lim looked across the table at this ordinary-looking man with his thick glasses and his calm face and said, Who are you? And Yoon Jin-woo said, I'm the reason your 6 years of investigation kept failing. It took Lim about 30 seconds to decide whether to arrest him on the spot or listen. He listened. What followed was one of the most complex, most carefully negotiated intelligence exchanges in Seoul's organized crime history. Over 18 months, meeting in different locations, always public, always ordinary, Yoon Jin-woo gave Lim Jae-hyun a complete picture of the Brotherhood's financial infrastructure. Structured so that no single meeting gave enough to act on alone. Structured so that if anything happened to Yoon, the information would still reach the surface through channels he had arranged in advance. He had been 3 steps ahead the entire time. The encrypted records in the storage unit were just the backup. The real architecture of what Yoon had built was distributed across people and places that the Brotherhood didn't even know existed. The ghost had been preparing for his own disappearance for years. But now the timeline was collapsing. Oh Sung-jin's death meant Baek was moving faster than expected. Yoon had planned to be gone, his family relocated, his exit secured, before any of this triggered. Now he was out of time. He called Lim from a payphone near Hongik University Station at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday. He said 3 words, move it up. The operation that Lim Jae-hyun had been preparing for 6 years was activated in 72 hours. Simultaneous raids across 7 locations in Seoul. The private dining room in Yongsan. The real estate office in Itaewon. 3 holding companies registered in the names of relatives. A distribution warehouse in Dobong-gu that looked, from the outside, like it stored restaurant supplies. 41 arrests in a single night. Baek Tae-oh was taken from his apartment in Gangnam at 2 in the morning, still in his pajamas, surrounded by men whose faces he recognized and could not believe. He had been so focused on consolidating power inside the Brotherhood that he had never considered the possibility of the floor simply falling away beneath him. The old boss, Park Chung-suk, was in hospital when they came for him. He didn't resist. He had, they said later, almost seemed relieved. And Yoon Jin-woo? He was not there. By the time the raids began, he had been gone for 48 hours. His family, too. Min-ji had been told, finally, all of it, in a hotel room in Incheon while Yoon sat across from her and watched her face move through shock and grief and rage, and something that eventually, slowly, settled into something like understanding. She didn't speak to him for 3 days after that conversation. On the 4th day, she took his hand. They were relocated. New names. A city far enough from Seoul that the neon and the rain and the buzzing prepaid phone felt like something from a story someone else had lived. Their daughters were told a version of the truth, enough to understand, not enough to destroy them. Yoon Jin-woo received a reduced sentence for cooperation. 18 months suspended. The judge, reading the terms of the agreement, said, off the record, that he had never seen a case built with such precision and such patience. Lim Jae-hyun did not retire. His career was suddenly, unexpectedly revived. He gave a press conference in which he did not mention any informant and took none of the credit he was being offered. Some things, he said, you just don't talk about. He was lying, of course. Graciously. The Brotherhood of Daewha, as it had existed for 20 years, ceased to function within 6 months of the arrests. Not because all of its members were in prison, many weren't, but because the financial infrastructure that Yoon Jin-woo had built and then dismantled through his testimony could not be reconstructed. The money stopped moving. And when the money stops moving, everything else stops too. Somewhere in a quiet city that isn't Seoul, a man sits on a balcony in the evening and watches the light change. He doesn't wear glasses anymore, he never needed them. His hair is longer now. A little more gray. His wife brings 2 cups of coffee and sits beside him. She doesn't ask him what he's thinking. She already knows. He is always thinking several steps ahead. Even here, even in the quiet, he reaches over and takes her hand. She lets him. The ghost is gone. The man who replaced him isn't famous, isn't powerful, isn't feared. He's just a man on a balcony, watching the light. And for the first time in 20 years, that is more than enough.